Flash flooding poses a recurring threat to Wollongong due to the geographical layout where water rushes down the escarpment towards the sea. Historical records highlight significant events dating back to March 1978, with subsequent occurrences as recently as April this year. In response to these challenges, the government has established guidelines for managing floodplains, including conducting flood studies to understand catchment stormwater runoff and delineate floodplain management areas. Specific attention is paid to mitigating backwater flooding at Port Kembla Inner Harbour, and there are also a variety of conditions placed on development applications to ensure flood mitigation measures are incorporated in all designs. Awareness and education programs, as well as community working bees, are also common. Flood planning and recovery efforts include various measures such as sandbag deliveries, waiving waste levy fees, local road closures, and the provision of grants and support payments. Recovery assistance points are also established to aid residents, and ongoing maintenance of creeks and stormwater systems is of the utmost priority to reduce risk and ensure community resilience in the face of future flash flooding events. Demographic profiles provide insights into the spatial distribution of the population in the Wollongong area. Understanding where people live, work, and gather helps identify areas of higher population density and concentration, which could be more vulnerable to flooding. High-density urban areas are more susceptible due to increased exposure to floodwaters and limited evacuation routes. These social dynamics help us identify people who may require additional assistance and resources during a flooding emergency. Over the last 20 years, there's been a 15% increase in Wollongong's population, which has now reached just over 200,000 people, with approximately a 50-50 split of males to females. Of these, just 3.24% identify as being of Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander origin, and 8.2% were born outside Australia. Wollongong's population is slowly aging. By 2031, there is an expected population increase of 23% in retirement age. Aging populations are tied to shifting disease burdens, increased expenditure on health and long-term care, and labour force shortages. Aged populations are generally more vulnerable with higher rates of disability and other needs. Characteristics such as age and marginalisation characteristics such as being an immigrant influences the vulnerability of communities to these natural hazards. Vulnerable populations may have limited resources, mobility, or access to information and support networks, making them more susceptible to the impacts of such disasters. Economic profiles provide insights into the financial resources, economic activities, and infrastructure in any community. Areas with high levels of development tend to have better built infrastructure, emergency response capabilities, and access to resources for disaster preparedness and recovery. Aging infrastructure, inadequate maintenance, and insufficient investment in disaster resilience measures increase the susceptibility of infrastructure systems to damage and disruption during flooding. Around 48% of the population are currently in employment, with just over half of these working full-time. The majority of the population owns their property, either outright or by mortgage, and owns their own vehicle. Just over 2% of the Wollongong population used public transport routes on Census Day in 2021, and almost 80% had an at-home internet connection the last time it was measured, which was 2016. Analyzing demographic and economic trends over time provides valuable insights into future vulnerabilities and resilience challenges. Population growth and economic development influence the exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity of communities to natural hazards. Monitoring shifts and dynamics helps anticipate risks, plan for future needs, and implement proactive strategies to enhance resilience. There are various support networks and health services, including multiple hospitals, critical care centres, aged care facilities, and community support services, which provide a variety of employment, housing, education, healthcare, and cultural integration services. By assessing the presence and effectiveness of support networks and health services for vulnerable populations, local authorities, healthcare providers, and community organisations can identify gaps in service delivery, prioritise resources, and develop targeted interventions to address the specific needs of these groups. This information also helps in planning for emergency responses, crisis management, and disaster recovery efforts, ensuring that vulnerable populations receive adequate support and protection during times of adversity. Ultimately, the strengthening of support networks and health services enhances the resilience and well-being of the entire community, fostering a more inclusive and equitable society. Wollongong has a multifaceted transportation network in line with the 2024 Integrated Transport Strategy. Entry and exit to the region is via the M1 Princess Motorway, as well as the Grand Pacific Drive, which goes along the coast as a scenic sightseeing route. However, there are additional entry and exit points, including Bulli and Macquarie passes, which are hazardous during wet weather as they go straight down the escarpment. There's also a variety of government-funded free bus shuttles, as well as paid bus routes, a single airport doing small domestic flights to Brisbane and Melbourne only, a rarely used cruise ship terminal, and the South Coast Rail line that connects Wollongong to Sydney in the north. There's also a current e-scooter trail underway, and Wollongong is Australia's only UCI bike city with biking lanes on many major roads. During flooding, the transportation network in Wollongong faces significant challenges that impact evacuation efforts, emergency service access, and overall community safety. The main driving routes are susceptible to flooding, especially in low-lying areas with limited emergency access for evacuations. Bus lines are regularly disrupted by the weather or cancelled completely due to flooded roads, which increase the risk of accidents. The tramline, airport, and shipping terminal is severely affected in many cases of flooding, which further complicates evacuation and emergency response efforts. Initiatives such as the e-scooter trial and the bike lanes are largely unusable during flooding events. Government agencies and emergency services can run regular awareness initiatives to help build community resilience by equipping residents with knowledge and skills to mitigate flooding, ensuring that communities remain prepared and vigilant. This also bolsters relationships between workers in the community that helps with coordination of flood mitigation methods and developing plans tailored to meet the specific needs of the community. By working together, communities can leverage the expertise and resources of emergency services to enhance their flood preparedness. The reach of such programs can be increased through harnessing the power of social media to share resources and facilitate discussion. Such programs also help foster connections among neighbours, which facilitates collective action during flooding events. Collaboration motivates individuals to work together and engage in proactive measures by sharing of resources toward flood resilience. By promoting self-efficacy and fostering a culture of preparedness, communities can better withstand and recover from flood disasters. Protecting the most vulnerable members of society is a strategy for safeguarding the entire community. This includes building their capacity and offering targeted support and assistance tailored to the unique challenges faced by these groups. While elderly individuals may be particularly vulnerable due to age-related limitations, their life experience of resilience or adaptability enables them to cope more effectively with disaster-related stress, which contributes to the overall resilience and safety of the entire community. Investing in the multimodal transport network is a strategic approach to capacity building. Although diverse transport options exist, this will limit the community's reliance on personal vehicles and ensures our vulnerable members of the community have equitable access to transport services. By ensuring minimal disruption to transport networks during flooding events, Wollongong can increase its resilience. Addressing these challenges requires comprehensive planning and investment in resilient infrastructure and education programs to ensure the continued functionality of transportation networks during natural hazard events such as floods. Thank you for coming along today. I'll be around for the next few minutes if anyone has any questions or any suggestions to discuss. Thanks.